Love me tender, love me dear.
The last night of 1976 in Nashville winter chill slipped through every crack of the city's grandest auditorium. The city itself seemed hushed, save for the brilliant lights illuminating the stage, where the roar of thousands filled every seat. Sold out weeks before, yet behind the thick velvet curtain, no one knew the private unease Elvis Presley carried inside him, a sense that somewhere behind the applause, an emptiness waited, unnameable and cold. Tonight's show was hailed by the press as Elvis's year-end landmark, his last major concert before a long break, perhaps his final one for months to come. Reporters clustered outside, fans gathered in groups, clutching tickets like fragments of their youth. Everything was ready for a night to remember. Backstage was wide, cold, harsh with fluorescent light. Amid the clamor, guitars being tuned, hushed voices, a manager's hurried calls. Elvis sat quietly at his dressing table, gaze unfocused, drifting toward the fogged glass of the window. He was just about to stand when the door opened. A young stagehand stepped in, face tense, holding an envelope with no name, no stamp. Only a single line to Elvis: "If miracles exist, please sing Love Me Tender for Danny." Elvis took the letter. Surprised, he received hundreds of fan letters daily, but almost never did one appear so quietly. Delivered straight to his dressing room, he asked softly, "Who left this?" The boy shook his head. "I'm not sure. I just saw someone moving quickly in the corridor." Dropped the letter, then vanished into the crowd. Elvis opened the envelope. Inside was a neatly folded page. Lines trembling, "Forgive me if this letter disturbs you. My name is Margaret. Danny's mother, my son, 7 years old, passed away from leukemia last week. Before he left, Danny had only one wish: to hear you sing Love Me Tender. Just once more. Every night I sang it to him, and he believed that if you sang it somewhere, he would hear it, even from far away. If miracles exist, please sing that song for Danny. Even just a verse. My son will be listening from a very distant place." The handwriting was steady. Not a single correction, like the writer had composed every word in her heart before lifting the pen. At the end, no address. Nothing but a small, clumsy heart. And a single line: "Thank you for giving hope, if only in a song." Elvis was still. He held the letter, feeling a coldness creeping into his hands. There was something in that plea that touched the deepest wound in him, the loneliness of a boy without his mother, the unspoken emptiness of a man who could stand before oceans of people yet feel utterly alone. The show was about to begin. The manager knocked on the door. 10 minutes. "Sire, time to get ready." Elvis nodded, slipped the letter into his breast pocket, and stepped into the hall. Outside, the street lamps cast golden rectangles onto the cold walls. The sound of loudspeakers echoed his name. But with each step, he felt he was walking between two worlds. One, the glittering stage ahead. The other, the small handwriting of a child now gone from this earth. On his way to the stage, Elvis paused at the staircase, closed his eyes. He remembered his own childhood, his mother Gladys, the cold nights when she sang him to sleep with her rough, loving voice. "Love me tender, love me sweet. Never let me go," his mother's voice. The gentle embrace of long ago nights. And this new letter from a grieving mother. These memories overlapped, making his hands tremble without warning. The wings of the stage went quiet as Elvis appeared, his eyes deeper, farther away than usual. He spoke little, nodded to the band, his hand tightening around the letter in his pocket. Tonight, nobody knew it yet, but Elvis had made up his mind. He would sing not just for the thousands in front of him, but for a small soul listening from a far-off place. The show opened as always, Elvis' voice soaring, the music crashing, the audience singing along to every line. But there was something different in the way he held each note, the way every melody fell softly, as if misting the auditorium in a quiet haze. Each time he paused between songs, his gaze drifted toward the distant rows, as if searching for someone in the crowd, even knowing he'd never see them. That night, when the lights faded backstage, Elvis lingered. He drew out the letter, read it once more. His lips moved in a whisper no one heard if miracles exist. Then tonight, Danny, you will hear. And from that moment, a small promise, a wish never delivered, began to echo inside the heart of a man who seemed to have lived through every sorrow, yet who, at his core, still longed to be lulled to sleep by a gentle lullaby. At 8 o'clock sharp, Elvis stepped onto the stage to a thunderstorm of applause. The spotlights shone so brightly that his white jumpsuit seemed to glow like something celestial. The first guitar notes struck, and the auditorium quaked with the pulse of thousands of beating hearts. No one there could have guessed that, beneath all the brilliance, Elvis's mind was quietly consumed by the small letter tucked against his chest. The show opened with the familiar classics, Blue Suede Shoes, Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock. Elvis swayed and smiled, pouring energy into every song. But often his gaze drifted somewhere far beyond the crowd, as if, in a distant corner of the hall, he heard the whisper of a child's soul. Every note rang perfectly. Every phrase landed with force. But the keenest observers sensed a heaviness, a weight, in every drawn-out line he sang tonight. Midway through the concert, the lights softened. Elvis sat at the edge of the stage, catching his breath after a string of electric songs. The band played slower, giving way to a suspenseful silence, as if the whole crowd held their breath at once. Elvis's eyes swept the audience, every pair of eyes lifted toward him, waiting for something truly special. In that moment, he made his decision. Tonight would not be like any other night. Elvis stood, gesturing for the band to stop completely. The hall fell into a dense silence, thick, reverent, almost holy. He pulled the letter from his breast pocket, smoothed the crease, and spoke in a low, steady voice. Sometimes, a letter finds us when we least expect it, and just one line can shake the heart to its core. He began to read word by word, line by line, his eyes fixed on the little page. If miracles exist, please sing Love Me Tender for Danny. Even though he's not here anymore, he's listening from a very distant place. The air thickened. A choked sob escaped from the front row. A woman covered her face, clutching an old concert ticket in trembling hands. An old man bowed his head, shoulders shaking quietly. Even proud young men wiped away tears as they trickled down their cheeks. In that instant, all barriers of age, gender, classe disappeared. There was only empathy, tenderness, a sense of shared loss for Danny, for Margaret, for everyone who ever lost someone they loved. Elvis folded the letter, raised his eyes to the crowd. His voice grew soft. Tonight, I dedicate this next song to Danny, and to anyone who has ever lost something precious. Those we love may no longer be with us, but love remains in every melody, every lyric, every breath. The room was still. The band, understanding, shifted into a gentle, warm arrangement. Elvis took the microphone in both hands, closed his eyes. He didn't rush. The piano began the first delicate notes of Love Me Tender, soft as a sigh. And then Elvis sang, voice both tender and pleading. Each word, each note, was a thread mending the wounds in every heart present. No one moved or spoke, as if 1,000 souls embraced, all listening, sending that song out across the distance to wherever Danny might be. The lights softened, casting a golden glow across Elvis's face. A tear slipped down his cheek. He didn't hide it. He didn't wipe it away. In that moment, the king of rock and roll was no longer a legend, but a man who knew pain, loss, and how to love with every bit of his soul. As the song ended, Elvis bowed for a long time. The audience remained silent. No one clapped. No one shouted. They stood, holding each other, whispering thanks not just to Elvis, but to everyone who had ever made their world a kinder place. That night, Elvis realized some songs are written not just to be sung, but to bind lonely souls together. And some letters, even without a name, have the power to change thousands of hearts. As the last note of Love Me Tender faded, the auditorium hovered in a delicate haze. No applause, no movement. No one wished to break the fragile magic that had just blossomed from a mother's letter and an artist's song. Elvis remained seated, hands clasped, eyes downcast to the wooden stage where his shadow stretched long, a shadow no longer shaped by legend, but by the quiet longing of a son who once needed to be sung to sleep. Suddenly, from the furthest row, a single match flared, then another. Then flashlights and lighters caught and echoed the spark. In seconds, the entire crowd became a miniature universe, thousands of trembling stars scattered across the darkness. No one had spoken. No one had planned. Yet all lit a tiny flame, a silent answer to Danny's wish from far away. Elvis looked up, the glimmer dancing in his eyes, a quiet smile on his face, still streaked with tears. He signaled to the band, and they shifted to the gentle chords of Can't Help Falling in Love. This time, his voice melted into the whispered harmonies of thousands of beating hearts. A young woman in the audience wept, clinging to her partner's hand. An old lady near the aisle hugged her scarf, eyes closed in prayer for loved ones gone. A boy on his father's shoulders held up a lighter, his face alight with an emotion he couldn't name. Down in the crowd, individual stories wove together, forming a current of feeling unlike anything any of them had known at a concert. Midway through the song, Elvis paused. He set the mic down and stood, gazing over the sea of faces, each one shining with the unspoken words, "To have my own Danny." He spoke, low and steady. "Tonight, I realize we are never alone in our pain. Maybe each of us carries something unsaid in our hearts, a wish not yet sent. A love that lingers. If you'd like, light a small flame for the one you miss most, for wishes unfulfilled, for love that remains." A muffled sob broke, soon joined by others. People wept without shame or hesitation. The air grew thick with compassion and connection. Phones, lighters, and matches flared everywhere. Not just the routine sea of lights seen at concerts, but a true ritual each tiny soul allowed to shine, for themselves and for those no longer here to see it. Elvis continued gently, "I want to give this moment to Danny, to Margaret, and to everyone watching us from afar. Music can't erase pain. but it can draw us closer, if only for a few brief minutes. He took up his guitar, strummed soft chords, and sang a refrain of "Love Me Tender, now for every unsent wish." The crowd joined in, each adding their voice. Those who'd cried now smiled through their tears. The lonely felt wrapped in the arms of strangers, bound together by a common rhythm, a shared longing, un invisible love. As the song ended, Elvis looked around, saying nothing, hands pressed to his chest in a deep bow. In that moment, tears still glistened on his cheeks, and the 1,000 little flames kept flickering a warmth that would linger long after the night was over. Afterward, people went home with red eyes but lighter hearts. Many kept their ticket stubs, a slip of paper, even a spent match, souvenirs of a night when music, tears, and compassion blended into a gentle lullaby for every lost soul. And somewhere, in the Nashville mist, a mother named Margaret heard word of what had happened. Her son's name, her small wish, transformed into a miracle that bridged the hearts of thousands of strangers. News of Elvis Presley's extraordinary concert spread like wildfire. The next morning, Nashville's major papers all ran headlines: "A letter for little Danny makes an entire auditorium cry." One reporter confessed, voice still shaky, "I raised my camera to capture Elvis's tears, but realized I, too, was crying like a child." The letter with no recipient, and the voice singing "Love Me Tender" flooded radio stations, newspaper columns, and even national television. Within a week, hundreds of letters poured into Elvis's management office lines, trembling, sometimes just a few words. "My daughter passed last year. Thanks to Elvis, I learned how to say goodbye. I never cried in public before, but last night I cried for Danny and for myself." A family from Texas wrote, "Our son is gravely ill. He says if Elvis's miracle for Danny was real, it could happen for every child." Each letter told a unique story, a personal pain, yet all sought comfort in the same new source, a warm auditorium, where music was not only entertainment, but healing for loss. Journalists dubbed it the Danny effect. Radio stations started dedicated segments, reading aloud letters from across the country, airing the wishes of thousands of strangers on stages in other cities. Whenever Elvis sang "Love Me Tender," the crowd would light thousands of small flames, continuing the Nashville ritual. Not just Elvis, other artists began telling similar stories about sick children, unfulfilled wishes, the small miracles music could bring. Concerts big and small across America blazed with lights and messages for Danny, for the one I miss, for the nameless child. A well-known columnist wrote, "Elvis turned a small letter into a movement. Now, every night in America, thousands sing 'Love Me Tender' for souls who are gone. No one knows Danny's face, but everyone feels a Danny in their own life." Elvis himself was changed. He spent more time reading fan mail. Before every show, he had his assistants select a few letters, quietly marking the stories that touched him most. Many times, after singing, he would retreat to his dressing room, reading and rereading Margaret's letter, Danny's mother, and thinking of his own mother, of loneliness, of the fragile thing music could mend. New charities for children with terminal illnesses sprang up, many inspired by Danny's story. A special campaign called "Love Me Tender for Angels" was launched, raising millions for children's hospitals across America. Each donor received a card printed with the lyrics and images of 1,000 tiny flames, a nightly reminder of ordinary miracles. In Memphis, A great mural was painted on an old building, Elvis, singing beneath a field of twinkling lights. Under the words, "Some miracles start with a single small wish," families brought their children to see it, telling them about Danny, about kindness, about how a song could unite generations. Margaret, Danny's mother, when she learned of the Love Me Tender movement, sat for hours by her small window, holding a single slip of paper, the letter she'd never sent to Elvis by name, the letter that had changed a community. She whispered, "You're gone from this world, my son, but your name is now the thread tying strangers' hearts together." That's the miracle of kindness. And so, from a quiet letter in the night, from one tearful performance, the miracle continued to spread, gentle but unstoppable. Whenever Love Me Tender echoed anywhere, thousands of small lights kindled wishes for unknown souls. A true miracle, greater than any words. Years passed. Yet the Love Me Tender movement only grew stronger. Across America, at concerts, festivals, even tiny music lessons in rural schools, people set aside a minute of quiet, lit a single light, and sang Love Me Tender for wishes unsent, for little souls gone, for Danny, for Margaret, and for all those in a faraway place who live on in memory. Elvis Presley changed too after that night. He aged more quickly than the world expected, but also grew deeper, kinder. Before every show, he would take a moment alone backstage, rereading that old letter. It became more than habit. It was a ritual to keep his artist's heart from hardening in the spotlight. Sometimes, he quietly scribbled at the bottom of his set list, "Tonight, we sing for Danny." On quiet nights at Graceland, Elvis would sit at his old piano and softly sing Love Me Tender to himself, not to conquer the world anymore, but to soothe the tender scars that never quite healed. The story of Danny, of the letter with no recipient, of that tear-filled Nashville night, became a new legend in American music. Later artists retold it. There was a time when a single small wish could melt thousands of hearts, when an unsigned letter could turn music into a miracle. A music teacher in a small Kentucky town tells her students, "Sometimes, you don't need to know who your wish is for, just sing with your whole heart. And that's enough." A pediatrician in Boston keeps a slip of paper in her wallet, copied by hand. "If miracles exist, please sing Love Me Tender for Danny," she says. Whenever someone needs comfort, I read that line. It's like an unspoken prayer. Margaret, Danny's mother, lived out her days quietly in her house by the woods. She never met Elvis, but if asked, she simply smiled. "I don't need to meet him. Just knowing thousands sang for Danny is enough for me." Sometimes, on moonlit nights, she'd open the window, look up, and hum a line of Love Me Tender, trusting that somewhere Danny was listening. There were winter nights so cold, but no one felt alone. For in every house, every hall, every trembling heart, a part of Danny lived on, echoing through those gentle melodies. When Elvis Presley died, millions flooded Memphis. On the night of his funeral, thousands upon thousands of tiny lights were kindled, and all sang Love Me Tender in farewell. That night, everyone thought of an unsent wish, a lost loved one, a memory too tender to name. That night, there were no strangers. That night, music truly became a home where all souls, living or gone, were wrapped together in a lullaby. Some wishes never need a proper address. For the miracle finds every heart yearning for love. And some songs like Love Me Tender will go on singing, binding those who remain to souls who have gone, reminding us that somewhere, all gentleness continues. You've been watching Behind the Limelight. If this story touched you, please leave a like, share it with those you care about. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on a journey into the untold, deeply human stories of legends. If you'd like to help keep these memories burning bright, press super thanks below. Because sometimes a song, a small wish, or a gesture from you may become the very miracle someone out there is waiting for.